Every retirement plan I have ever reviewed has something in common with every other retirement plan I have ever reviewed. Not the investment allocation, which varies considerably, not the projected retirement date, which varies even more. What every plan shares is a number, a target monthly income that the plan is designed to produce, and an assumption embedded beneath that number that is almost never made explicit, but that determines more about the plan's success or failure than any other single factor. The assumption is this, that the expenses of retirement are roughly known, roughly stable, and roughly similar in character to the expenses of working life. That if someone spent a certain amount per month during their working years, adjusting downward for the cessation of work-related costs, the resulting figure is a reasonable estimate of what retirement will cost. This assumption is comfortable, it is widespread, and for most people, it is wrong in a specific and predictable way. Wrong not because the estimate of ordinary expenses is inaccurate, but because there is a category of cost in retirement that does not appear in ordinary expense estimates, that grows in both likelihood and magnitude as retirement progresses, and that has the capacity to transform a retirement that was financially sound by conventional planning standards into one that is financially strained by realities the plan never incorporated. My name is William Grant. The hidden cost I want to name clearly today is healthcare in its full dimension, not the predictable ongoing premium and copay structure that most retirement plans do incorporate, but the unpredictable, catastrophic, and often prolonged care needs that arise in the later stages of a long retirement and that can consume, in months or years, a significant fraction of the accumulated savings that decades of disciplined work produced. Long-term care. The sustained need for assistance with daily activities that arises from chronic illness, cognitive decline, physical frailty, or the simple accumulation of age-related limitations is the financial event that retirement planning most consistently underestimates, most systematically avoids discussing, and that produces the most dramatic gap between what a retirement was planned to be and what it becomes in practice. The scale of the risk is not obscure. It is simply uncomfortable enough that financial conversations tend to move past it quickly. The majority of people who live into their 80s will at some point require some level of paid assistance, in-home care, assisted living, memory care, skilled nursing, for a period that ranges from months to many years. The annual cost of full-time in-home care in most parts of the United States is comparable to or exceeds the median household income of working Americans. The annual cost of a private room in a skilled nursing facility substantially exceeds it, and these costs are not covered by Medicare beyond very limited circumstances. They are private pay expenses drawn from the accumulated savings of the person receiving care, and, when those are exhausted, from the assets of the spouse or other family members. The financial consequence of 2 or 3 years of full-time care needs, a duration that is entirely within the range of common experience, is the depletion of a retirement savings position that looked adequate for everything the couple had planned. I want to make this concrete through someone I worked with named Frederica. She was 64 when I first met her, a retired hospital administrator whose career had given her more than average familiarity with the healthcare system, and whose retirement plan was, by the standards of conventional financial planning, genuinely well constructed. She had a diversified portfolio, a clear income strategy, a realistic lifestyle budget, and a Social Security claiming strategy that had been carefully optimized. What her plan contained in the category of health care was a projected premium for Medicare supplemental coverage and an annual estimate for out-of-pocket medical expenses. What it did not contain was any provision for the possibility that she or her husband would eventually need sustained personal care. Because when I initially worked through the plan with her, that possibility was something she had thought about in the abstract, but had not translated into a financial number with a financial response. Her husband Raymond had been diagnosed with early-stage Parkinson's disease at 68, 4 years into their retirement. The progression over the subsequent 5 years was gradual until it was not. And when it accelerated, the care needs it produced were substantial, persistent, and expensive in ways that bore no relationship to any number that had previously appeared in any version of their financial plan. The in-home care hours that began as supplemental assistance became a full-time presence. The modifications to their home required for his safety required significant capital. The respite care that Frederica needed periodically for her own health and functioning added additional cost on top. And all of this arrived simultaneously with the period in which their investment portfolio, under the stress of the 2022 market correction, had declined meaningfully from its prior year peak. A combination of increased cash need and reduced portfolio value that their plan had not modeled, because neither of its components had been anticipated. What Frederica and I worked through during an extended and difficult period was a restructured financial plan that incorporated the care costs as they were actually occurring and projected them forward based on the realistic trajectory of her husband's condition. The restructuring required choices that should never have been their first encounter with this type of decision. It required decisions about asset liquidation in a sequence driven by tax efficiency and liquidity characteristics. It required a reassessment of their housing situation that balanced his care needs against the costs and disruptions of any change. And it required a conversation about long-term care insurance, the financial product specifically designed to transfer this risk that should have happened a decade earlier when both of them were healthy enough to qualify for coverage at a premium that was affordable. The preparation for this cost does not require pessimism. It requires honesty about probability and planning about contingency. The probability that a couple reaching age 65 will experience significant care needs at some point in their combined lifetime is not small or theoretical. It is the most likely scenario, not an outlier. Planning for it in advance, while the options are broadest and least expensive, is the difference between a retirement that absorbs what happens and a retirement that is overwhelmed by it. The instruments for preparation include long-term care insurance, hybrid life and care products that provide either a death benefit or care coverage depending on which need arises, and the deliberate preservation of a portion of retirement assets in liquid form that is explicitly designated as a care reserve rather than income-generating investment. None of these preparations is comfortable to make. All of them are far more comfortable to make now than to wish for later, when the circumstances that make them necessary have already arrived. The specific action I want to put to you this week is one that most people who have not done it will find unexpectedly clarifying. Go to any of the publicly available long-term care cost calculators. They exist from multiple reputable sources, and look up the current median annual cost of the 3 primary care settings in your geographic area. In-home care at 40 hours per week, assisted living at a quality level you would genuinely consider acceptable, and skilled nursing at a private room rate. Write those 3 numbers down. Then calculate how many years of your current retirement savings each of those settings would consume, starting from today's balance with no other withdrawals. The result of that calculation is the information your retirement plan needs before it is complete. And the distance between where that number currently sits and where you would want it to sit is the gap that the preparation conversation needs to close.